Welcome to This Explainer. We're diving straight into a frankly alarming but absolutely fascinating thesis by Marynês Pereira. She's a heavyweight in neurobusiness and AI with over 40 years of experience. In her work, The 21st Century's Silent Fire, she exposes a hidden crisis that is literally burning through the foundation of human knowledge. She argues that our obsession with digital efficiency is causing a catastrophic loss of intellectual integrity. So let's unpack this, because what she's found is going to completely change how you look at the internet, artificial intelligence, and even those dusty paperbacks sitting on your shelf.
Right now, behind closed corporate doors, there's a shocking reality playing out. When we think about the destruction of knowledge, we usually picture tyrants burning books in public squares. But Marynês points out that today's tragedy is entirely different. It's quiet. Cutting-edge tech companies are literally buying up millions of physical books, running them through high-speed industrial guillotines to slice off the spines, scanning the pages, and then completely shredding the physical originals into oblivion. Just let that sink in for a second. Books that have survived centuries are being destroyed to feed raw data into generative AI. Tech giants justify this under fair use loopholes, but it begs a pretty huge question. Why are they so desperate for these older books in the first place? Well, that brings us to Section 1, the silent fire, and the destruction of analog history.
And that leads right into Section 2, model collapse, or the digital dementia infecting AI. So to solve the mystery of the shredded books, we need to look at a massive July 2024 study from Oxford and Cambridge published in Nature. They diagnosed a severe technological disease called model collapse. Honestly, it's basically digital dementia. This progressive, irreversible degradation happens when an AI is trained on the automated garbage produced by other AIs. Instead of learning from human reality, it's learning from an imitation of an imitation. Think of it like taking a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. Eventually, the sharp edges blur, the details just vanish, and you're left with this incomprehensible, blurry gray mess. The mechanics of this collapse happen in 4 devastating steps. Step 1, high-quality initial training. The first big language models were mind-blowing because they learned from pure human data, our books, our essays, our actual conversations. But then, step 2 hits, ecosystem saturation. We humans started using AI to write everything, meaning over half the text on the web is now just artificial. Step 3 is the vicious cycle. Tech companies send out web scrapers to train their next-gen AI, and those scrapers accidentally suck up all this unverified AI noise. Finally, step 4. An irreversible loss of reasoning. The AI forgets rare words, its logic falls apart, and it descends into total mediocrity. Once a model hits this stage, it's game over for that lineage. The damage is permanent. And that is exactly why companies are desperately shredding pre-2022 books. They need a pure, unpolluted source of human thought before the internet got flooded with AI garbage. Now on to Section 3, copyists versus curators, and the human behavior actually driving this collapse. Because Marynês Pereira makes a really crucial point here. This isn't just a technical glitch, it's a human laziness problem. Through a fascinating interview she actually conducted with the Gemini AI, she outlined a stark contrast in how we behave. On one side, you've got the copyist. This is someone who relies entirely on raw prompts, has no prior knowledge of the subject, skips all the fact-checking, and basically just copies, pastes, and pollutes the web with informational noise. On the flip side is the curator. The curator comes in with prior knowledge, they structure their own inquiry, they rigorously validate the AI's data, and they inject their own real-world human experience into the result. The curator protects our digital ecosystem, while the copyist is actively destroying it. And here's the thing, this lazy copyist behavior has massive real-world consequences, especially depending on where you live. Sure, the massive English-speaking web has a huge historical buffer of validated scientific data. But regional ecosystems? They are incredibly vulnerable. Take the Brazilian digital space, for instance. If the local internet there gets flooded with shallow, automated Portuguese content, the search engines and AI models are going to adapt to that low quality. It creates this immediate risk of institutionalized mediocrity. You're literally degrading the information entire populations rely on for absolutely crucial things like health, finance, and then the law. Which brings us to Section 4, history repeats itself, and the tragedy of erasing original memory. We have to zoom out here, because this terrifying loss of primary sources isn't actually new. Humanity has this really dark habit of repeatedly erasing our own intellectual heritage. Ironically, back in 612 BC, a fire at Nineveh inadvertently baked and actually saved 30,000 clay tablets for millennia. but usually, fire is the end. In 213 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang burned books to consolidate ideological power. In 1193, the legendary 9-story library of Nalanda University was torched. We saw the exact same thing with the Nazi book burnings in 1933, and even recently, in 2018, with the tragic negligence that led to Brazil's National Museum fire, which wiped out 20 million historical items. Whether it's tyranny, war, or just sheer negligence, the destruction of physical archives has always forced humanity to try and piece our history back together from whatever scraps happened to survive. But today's silent fire, it's terrifying in a completely brand new way. When historical libraries burned, the knowledge turned to ash. It was just gone. Today, the knowledge isn't turning to ash, it's being privatized. Those shredded physical books are being locked away inside closed corporate algorithms. Think about the danger there. If an AI algorithm hallucinates a historical fact tomorrow or invents a fake scientific rule, the original physical book is no longer sitting on a library shelf for us to go check and correct it. Our collective human knowledge is being entirely privatized by just a handful of tech giants. Let's move to Section 5, Saving Human Knowledge and Empowering the Human Mind. Fortunately, Marynês Pereira doesn't just leave us stranded in doom and gloom. Technology is ultimately just a reflection of its operator, so to preserve our intellectual integrity, she gives us 4 concrete practices we need to adopt like yesterday. First up, autonomous structuring. You have to formulate your own thesis and logic before you ever type a prompt into an AI. Don't let the machine do your thinking for you. Second is cross-referencing. Search across global, validated databases and manually review everything. Third, critical questioning. Use Socratic dialogue. Never just accept the first answer the AI spits out. Challenge its argument, ask for opposing views, keep your own cognitive skills sharp. And fourth, specifically for businesses, use closed environments. Companies need to build private AI assistants trained exclusively on their own internally validated data to protect their institutional memory from the polluted public web. So, this really brings us to a critical crossroads. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to reiterate just how incredibly valuable Marynês Pereira's work is here. Her 40 years of expertise shines a glaring spotlight on our current digital habits. She reminds us that preserving human wisdom doesn't just depend on giant data servers. It depends entirely on our continuous willingness to read, to study, and to actually think for ourselves. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. When you sit down at your keyboard today, are you contributing to the digital noise as a copyist? Or are you willing to take a stand and act as a curator of human wisdom? The choice is entirely up to you.